What's up guys, Neillyy here. Some of you probably know me. I'm mainly doing this video to help people on my own server. We've actually been winning most of our invasions already, but there's always a few people that are, sub 1 million damage, and that's kind of what I'm targeting here with this video. I want to just give people the basics, let them know what weapons to use, what roles to play when they're using those weapons. Just make sure they're doing, the bare minimum in order to hit the 1 million damage mark. And also for the people that are hitting 1 million damage but are struggling to push past that, there might be some tips in here that'll help with that too. So yeah, some of the basics include the trophies that you're using, the weapons that you're using, the attributes that you're using, the gem that you're using is also very important. And so I'll start with trophies, okay? So the bare minimum you should have going into an invasion is you should really have 3 basic corrupted trophies. They're not hard to get. If you don't know somebody with 200 furnishing, people are constantly advertising it in global that they're willing to make trophies for people because it helps them get aptitude. There's really no excuse. The trophy mat is cheap as hell for the corrupted. You probably even have it without even realizing it, because I know when I checked my storage to make mine, I had like 9. I think you just get them for killing random corrupted enemies around the map or whatever, but it's called the corrupted crest. This is the component you need to make the basic trophy. I'll bring up on screen what you need to make the minor. Some people might not even have the minor trophy yet, and I think if you're going into an invasion without at least having minor, to be honest, I think you at least having basic at this point, it's not good. You're kind of, what's the word, you're putting the rest of your team at a disadvantage by doing that, and there's really no excuse for it either, because the mats are extremely cheap to find. So on screen here I have the minor corrupted combat trophy. One of these does 3% bonus damage when fighting corrupted enemies. So when you have 3 of these, that's 9% extra damage, and that's just the minor trophy. Okay, crafting recipe is here. It's cheap as hell to make. Look at this: 25 lumber, 20 steel, 1 maple stain, 25 life bolts. Yeah, get yourself 3 of these, okay, if you don't have them. I'm assuming pretty much everybody has minor trophies at this point. If you don't, you really need to get on it. And then the basic trophy, honestly just as easy: 25 weirdwood planks, 20 star metal ingots, 1 oak stain, the corrupted crest, which I showed you in my inventory earlier, and then the minor trophy. And again, you want 3 of these. You'll see here that the basic corrupted combat trophy does 4% bonus damage. So when you get 3 of these together, it's 12%. It's a massive difference. So it goes from 9% to 12%. Now some of you might even have the major corrupted combat trophy. I personally don't. I don't think it's super necessary. It's another 1%. So when you get all 3 of these, it'll be 15. But the legendary material to find to make these trophies is actually quite hard to get. It requires a lot of farming, and I don't know if the trade-off is worth it. It probably is if you're at nothing else. I know I've been farming for this particular artifact, but I haven't gotten it. A lot of people don't think that the trade-off is worth it. For the time that you need to put into farming it, it's only 1% extra damage per trophy. The thing is though, if you're getting like 1 million damage, 1% is actually quite a bit. So maybe if you have some time, go farm the major material. But if you're at the point where you don't even have a minor and you don't even have a basic, just focus on that first. If you're like me and you've got 3 basic corrupted trophies and you've got them a while, then yeah, sure, go farm the major trophy component. Maybe you'll get lucky, maybe you'll get it, and then that's another 1% extra damage in invasions. It's good. The next thing you should do is you should have 2 weapons, right? Regardless of what role you're going to play, I'll get onto that. You should have 2 weapons with the corrupted bane perk. So you can see here on my bow, it's 14% extra damage to corrupted. That is huge. That is huge. Now there are other weapons that are really, really good, like best in slot weapons. Like I have Infamy in my inventory here. I have the Lazarus bow, like Keen Vicious Enchanted. These are best in slot PvP weapons. Javelin of Dryatic Empowerment, Keen Vicious, Keenly Empowered. These are amazing weapons, but in invasions, believe it or not, it's actually better to bring in a weapon with corrupted bane, because the 14% damage that you get is massive. It's more, it's like having 3 major trophies nearly. It's 1% short of having 3 major trophies. It's crazy damage. So I really recommend, if people haven't, to go on the marketplace. These weapons are going to be cheap on the marketplace because Corrupted Bane isn't like a weapon perk that people look for. Alternatively, if you have a lot of Asmodeum, Glittering Ebony, Runic Leather, like refining mats and stuff, you can roll one. So if you know an engineer that has 200 engineering and 3 major trophies, and they can make 595 to 600 weapons, engineering weapons specifically, get yourself one of these, Shard of Baitilus. I don't know how you pronounce it, but get yourself one of these, give them the dexterity craft mod, give them your timeless shard for your spear, and just roll one. And it doesn't need to be 600. I'm using a 599. The other perks aren't super important on your weapons. Now, it helps to have something like Enchanted or Keen or Vicious or something like that, but it's not super important. As long as you have Corrupted Bane, you're going to do a crazy amount more damage. The next thing I want to talk about is armor and attributes. It's pretty easy. I've seen people in my invasions even rocking skinning gear. It's very easy to get yourself a full set of dexterity gear, so I recommend you do that. My set looks like I put a lot of money into it, but really I didn't. I think a lot of this stuff was stuff that I just had lying around, and I think I bought a couple pieces. I think I bought this piece here with Sundering Javelin because that's a really good perk for the spear. It applies 19% rend for 10 seconds, which is really good in conjunction with this ability, Perforate. Perforate does, with this extra ability, Rupturing Strikes, it does 10% rend per strike against targets above 50% health. So if you perforate and then you javelin using the Sundering Javelin perk, you get 49% rend, which is 1% short of the max rend you can apply, which is amazing. People don't realize that how important this is in invasions, but it's literally like it's bread and butter stuff. Like everybody should be doing it. The next thing I'll show you are my attributes. So this is what I'm rocking currently in invasions. I don't take any constitution. I take as much dexterity as possible, allowing for 150 intelligence. The 150 intelligence is interesting, right? Because the third perk on this is plus 15% to elemental damage. Now, you're probably thinking, why the hell am I using intelligence when I'm using a bow and a spear? But you see the gem that I have slotted, the arcane gem? This gem, corrupted are weak to it, okay? And what that means is, I'll bring up this image I have here, okay? This looks like a lot to take in, but if you see here, see the sapphire is arcane down the bottom, okay? When you go up to this chart here, you see corrupted, you go across to the green numbers, you'll see what they're weak to, okay? So you see corrupted, you see arcane. You do 130% damage to corrupted with an arcane gem slot, which means you get 30% extra damage to corrupted when you've got a gem like this slot. Okay? Arcane gem is by far the best one to use. You can use nature, you can see they're weak to that too, but it's only 15% extra damage, while arcane is 30. The reason I have 150 int is because it's plus 15% to elemental damage, which further increases the arcane damage that I do. Okay? And I'm blessed enough to have a ring with the arcane damage perk. You deal 4.8% more arcane damage. Altogether, it's just the number to the right of your actual physical damage. Like, when you split your damage on a weapon with a gem, with an intelligence gem, you'll see two numbers. You won't just see one big number. Your damage will be split. Basically, the number on the left is your base physical damage, and the number on your right is your elemental damage. I don't have anything here to show you. I don't have any enemies here to show you, but basically the number on the right will be much bigger because of the extra boost you get from intelligence and from the extra boost you get with the arcane damage perk. So yeah, I'd recommend doing this if you are using the gems, and that's what I want to lead on to next. You really should be using the gems, especially the sapphire. Cut pristine sapphires are reasonably cheap on the market. If you get yourself, like a corrupted or an invasion set, of weapons, like I have here with Corrupted Bane, you can just put these gems in the weapons and just forget about them. You'll never have to change them. But if you're bringing your PvP weapons in and you're constantly changing gems back and forth, they can get expensive. That's why I highly recommend getting 2 weapons with Corrupted Bane that you can just keep specifically for invasions. You can put your cut pristine sapphires in them and you can just leave them. Hi guys, so after watching the video back, I realized I actually left out a really important part of the video, and that is of course your infused corrupted coatings and your honing stones. Okay, they removed the percent of damage that the infused corrupted coating actually gives, and I can't honestly remember what it was, but I remember it being quite high. These are a little bit pricey, but definitely worth picking up. Okay, and powerful honing stones are admittedly very pricey and probably not worth picking up for invasions. I've actually just started using strong. There's a difference of 1% in the damage, and as you probably remember from the trophy section, that's the difference between a basic and a major, which is actually it's a reasonable amount, but it's just not really viable using powerful honing stones in invasions with the amount of evasions that you might be in, you know, depending on how many territories you own. Maybe you only own like 1 or 2 in your faction, so you might want to use the powerful honing stones. Maybe you want to use them for an occasion, you know. For me though, personally, I just use strong or common. I think I just use strong for invasion, and I'll always use an infused corrupted coating on both my weapons. You only need to use 1 honing stone, but you need to apply the corrupted coating on each weapon, 1 per weapon. And it's also worth noting that you should probably eat a food, okay? Be that a basic food or an attribute food. Luckily enough, the recent Winter Convergence Festival actually brought out a lot of new foods, and their intention was to double the amount of gleamite that you gathered. But the secondary perk on it, I guess, would be that they increase an attribute by 33 for 25 minutes, okay? What I use for invasions, because the food for dexterity 40, like the regular dexterity 40 food, is quite hard to come by because you need to get a certain fish, and that certain fish only spawns in First Light, and First Light doesn't have any tier 3 fishing spots as far as I know. So in other words, it's quite hard to get. I just use the buttercream pudding. Dexterity by 33 for 25 minutes. It's the second best option other than the dexterity by 40 for 40 minutes, which would be usually here in the attribute food section. Next, I'm going to touch on rolls, okay? This is something that is very difficult to do in invasions due to the fact that there's 50 people in an invasion, but the governing company can only select 10 people. So it's not like a war where you can perfectly fine-tune a team. You're highly reliant on people signing up and people like with the right roles signing up. Like, we've run into trouble in previous invasions because we have too many healers signing up, for example. And if you have too many healers signing up, that means you're lacking DPS. And sometimes you can have too many DPS signing up and you don't have enough healers. You know, you can see the problem. And there's no real way around that other than just knowing people's roles. And the way I do that on my server, and for people in our server, you'll probably know this, is I have a spreadsheet and I've got people to put their name down under the appropriate build that they use, and I try and kind of correspond with that when I'm doing the roster and stuff for invasions, or when somebody in my guild is doing the roster, whoever's running the invasion. So the roles. The first role and the most important role by far is thrust DPS. Okay, thrust DPS. I'm going to refer to this picture again. You can see here corrupted. You go to the green numbers. The slash, thrust, and strike. Slash is your sword, great axe, hatchet. Thrust is your bow, musket, spear, and rapier. Okay, when you go to corrupted, you do 120% extra damage to corrupted using thrust weapons. So that's your bow, your musket, your spear, and your rapier. In other words, this should make up the bulk of your invasion army. You should have, you know, more people using bows and muskets and spears than people using great axes and hammers. Although that's the PvP meta, it's not the invasion meta. Okay, that's why you will see a lot of healers and a lot of tanks respecing for invasions. Like I myself am a healer. You can see here my healing kit is in my inventory, but in invasions I'm bow and spear. Basically your role, if you're using bow and spear, is you're probably on the ground, you're probably in the front line, you're killing all the trash mobs, and when a boss comes in, you're working in conjunction with your gravity well users, so your great axe users. You're running up, usually only one person per gate needs to do this. You're applying your rend, okay, that's 30%, that's 19%, that's 50% rend. Next thing, the brute gets gravwelled, you pump damage onto it, it dies before it even gets a chance to stand back up again. You know, you should be killing your brutes before they even get past this point here. Very easy to do. Same with Spriggans actually. If you make sure you have at least one spear per gate, applying the rend, you have gravwells doing, you know, what they do, you should be killing a Spriggan before it even hits like this area. Really, Spriggans have a little bit more health, but it's very easily done if you have people doing the rolls properly. And that's something that I've noticed in our invasions we kind of lack. We have a lot of range DPS, people using bows, but I don't see a lot of people using the spear. Like I said, you do only need one per gate, but sometimes we're even lacking that. I don't think people really know about the rend and know how important the rend is. Okay, like I said, the spear on its own can do 49% rend, and the max that you can get on a target is 50%. So it's insane, you know. And if you're using a bow and you don't find you're using your secondary weapon, bring a spear, because it might be a case of there's nobody on your gate applying rend, and then, you know, you could fill that role. The second very important role, I've already mentioned it, is the Gravwell users. Okay, so although corrupted aren't weak to slash, so they aren't weak to your great axe, you still do the normal amount of damage. They're not strong against slash either, so they're, you know, they still take the regular amount of damage they should. Great axes are extremely important. You need to be rocking the Gravwell ability. I don't think anybody who uses great axe wouldn't use Gravwell. It's probably the most OP ability in the game and always has been since betas. And that translates into invasions too, because you can Gravwell pretty much every single boss. Brutes are the ones that get affected by it the most. You can Gravwell Spriggans. It kind of slows them down a little bit. I'm pretty sure you can Gravwell Commanders. I'm not 100% on that. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think you can though. You can also body block Commanders while they're running, and you can kind of body block Spriggans too. They fixed it, but it's still doable. If you're bringing a great axe into an invasion, specifically for Gravwells, another thing you can do is you can bring a spear. I don't think hammers are worth bringing into invasions. I think a lot of people would agree with me on that. Hammers, they're good when bombers are coming, and if your ranged are slacking, in other words, and they're focusing on a boss and they're, you know, like they just see bombers running by them. Hammer's good for that because you can like Path of Destiny them and it stuns them and gives people time to shoot them and stuff. But other than that, you really shouldn't bring a hammer into an invasion, because referring back to this, you see corrupted, you do less damage with a hammer. They're strong against the hammer. You do 15% less damage than you would even with your gem. Your gem would offset some of that damage, but I mean it's just not worth doing. Do you know what I mean? When you can get 120% extra damage, it's just not worth doing less damage. So I would not recommend bringing hammers. I would recommend bringing a spear if you're a great axe user, and that just means that's another person with the possibility of applying rend. You know what I mean? Rend is the theme of this video. Okay, so the next role I want to talk about is the musketeers. Okay, musket players are probably best suited for the wall. Okay, you don't really want to put your musket players on the ground because there's no point. There's no point putting yourselves in danger when you can just sit up here and do the same amount of damage to bosses, and you can help out shooting bombers, all that kind of stuff, and also you can shoot the skulls when they appear. Something I don't think a lot of musketeers do on our wall currently is they don't bring a void gauntlet. Okay, they might bring like a rapier or a spear, and although bringing a rapier is a decent idea for maneuverability, like you can quickly, you know, you can move from one side of the wall to the other using a rapier, which is good, but I don't think it's extremely necessary. When another option, which I'm about to talk about, and I don't see a lot of people doing, is actually bringing a void gauntlet. Okay, so if you're a musketeer on the wall, you're doing your damage, there's a boss coming, you know, there's a Spriggan coming. If you quickly just change to your void gauntlet, put down your oblivion, and continue shooting the boss, okay? The oblivion is insane, right? It's 20% extra damage, 20% base extra damage by way of empower, okay, for 6 seconds. I think that's like 3 shots in a musket. It's probably 3 seconds. Let's test that. So you put your oblivion down. If you have shooter stance, it's even more. Yeah, you get 3 shots. So that's 3 shots with an extra 20% damage. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it is, okay? And if there's a bunch of musketeers on the wall, and this is a coordinated thing, okay, your musketeers could be talking to each other. Let's say there's somebody on siege and there's somebody just passing by, Spriggan spawns mid, you go up here, place your oblivion, start shooting the Spriggan. There could be 2 or 3 people in this oblivion. So that's 9 shots for 1 oblivion with an extra 20% damage. It's insane. It's something that people probably should start doing. Something that I'd recommend people do, and something that I would recommend our musketeers consider, I guess. I'm not using a good musket, by the way. I've just got my infamy. You probably, if you're using a musket, want to bring, you know, one with corrupted bane, similar to the bow and spear that I had. But yeah, the last and final role I want to talk about in invasions, and the last one that's necessary, okay, is your healers. Your healers in invasions, you're probably going to feel a bit underappreciated, okay, because it's not super, excuse me, it's not super necessary to have healers in invasions. You probably only need one per gate, okay. Sometimes we have two per gate, sometimes we have one somewhere in two other places. In the back gate in particular, you want at least two, maybe three. I think two is usually fine though. And you got to remember, there's no point using the single target heal unless you don't run with group mode. If you have group mode off, you could probably use the single target, but what I would recommend doing is, if you are a healer in an invasion, I would recommend Sacred Ground, of course. I'd recommend Beacon, and I'd recommend Orb of Protection. You want full AoE healing, because at the end of the day, you're not healing one group like you potentially would be in a war. You're healing two groups, possibly three if you're in the back gate, and depending on your strat. Okay, I'm assuming that people are going to be watching this from my server. So our strat is we have two groups per gate and three on the back. Okay, so if you're healing in my server and you're in the front gate, you're going to be healing for two groups. That's why I recommend using full AoE healing. So Orb of Protection, Beacon, Sacred Ground. Any of the passives. The passives are up to yourself. These are the ones I use. If I was using Orb, I'd have to take away this. I'd probably go there. I think I'd take the full 4 perks of Orb, and I'd probably get rid of this one because the buffs aren't super important anymore. I'd maybe even drop this and maybe that and maybe that. But I would get full Orb of Protection anyway. That would be what I would recommend to you healers. There's a reason I didn't mention tanks. Unfortunately, there's no real need for tanks in invasions, okay? You could argue that, you know, kiting bosses with tanks is easier, but it's not really, because the way the bosses work in invasions is the more damage you do to them, the more likely you are to get aggro. That's why I recommend, if you're a bow and a spear user, be prepared to kite bosses, okay? The reason I have this hated perk, well, it actually happened. It was just a happy accident that I got hated on this bow, but I use it to my advantage, okay? I do a lot of damage in invasions, so if there's like 3 brutes on my door, I will just pump damage into them, okay? And then quite recently, not the last invasion we did, but the one before that, I had 3 brutes take aggro to me. So that means 3 brutes. That means 3 brutes are coming off the door to attack you, and what you do is you just kind of like guide them, okay? They do an attack, you dodge it, but you stick close to them so they don't lose you, and you just kind of kite them like this, you know, and you bring them up here, bring them back here, and I think once you hit like this area here, they tend to stop following. But if you can just like keep them around this area, away from the door for a little while, I know it's hard because 9 times out of 10 there's going to be a skull in the sky shooting you if we haven't taken it down yet. But kiting bosses in this general area and bringing them up here is just amazing, and it helps our repair people, you know, do what they do and keep the doors up. And ultimately, kiting is just, it's an amazing tactic to deploy, and we should be doing it a lot more. I just mentioned it there, but I will go into more detail with the skulls next. One thing you can do to improve your invasions is learn the timings of the skulls and where they spawn, okay? The skulls are static, which means they spawn in the exact same place in the exact same time every single invasion. I actually have in my invasion spreadsheet the timings. Okay, so if you check here, this is where the skulls spawn, this is when the skulls spawn. It doesn't change. Okay? I don't know if you want to take a screenshot of that or something, but I also, if you're in my server, you probably have seen this spreadsheet. You've probably put your name on the actual invasion builds part. If you haven't done that, I'll link it in the Discord after I put this video in, and you can have a look. I'll probably put a link to the video down here as well. It also includes the time you can buy on. Okay, so this is when the round breaks. It breaks at 27 minutes. You have 45 seconds to go buy, you know, more arrows, more bullets. And that's actually something I forgot to mention. If you are a bow and musket player, do not waste orichalcum arrows and orichalcum bullets in here, okay? Because they're pricey. I don't know about your servers, but my server and probably the vast majority of the people that are going to be watching this video, you know, bullets and arrows they're pricey. So come to this little armory here, okay? Buy the Azoth arrows. It's pretty easy to do this. We'll have people in our invasions calling out when you can buy. Make sure you take advantage of that. Come back in really quickly, grab your arrows, and head back out again. I think when the invasion starts, you can buy 90 off the rip. So you have 90 arrows for the first wave, which is more than enough. Then 3 minutes into the invasion, you get another buy round. So you get to buy, I think I usually get up to like 250 in the second round. And then you get another buy round after another 3 minutes 40 seconds, so you can come in, and then by that stage I usually have 400 or 500, and that's enough to do me the invasion, or the remainder of the invasion. I'd highly recommend people do that if you're not doing that, by the way, because they do the same damage as Oracle Camaros. Oracle Camaros do a 1.2 damage modifier. I think the Azoth arrows are the exact same with the bullets, 1.2. So yeah, I'd be doing that. Another thing I didn't really talk about, I don't think I need to talk about repairs. If you're on my server, you know that the repair people are the MVPs. They're always the MVPs. They do amazing. If you're watching this and you're not on my server, I guess I can touch on it. You should have 3 repair people. That's all you need, okay? We have one group that's kind of specifically for repair people, and we also have 2 people that run siege just in that group as well. So the three repair people, you have one person that takes from this right side siege supply generator, and you have one person that takes from the left, okay? These are your main 2 repair people. Once they hit 500, they'll call out to the third repair person that they've hit 500 and you know which side they're on, and then the third repair person can start taking from the right and then eventually the left. And I don't know how exactly they do it then. I don't know if the main repair people take more, but as far as I know they don't. They just work off the 500 they have, and it works wonders every time. You don't need more than 3 people doing this, because if you have more than 3 people doing it, it just splits the resources too much and it becomes a bit of a problem. You might find that people aren't you know, it's just easier to have 3 people doing it, 3 dedicated people that know what they're doing. Another thing I want to touch on briefly is siege priority. So if you're using the siege, you probably, it kind of runs back into the musket roll that I was talking about. If you're rocking a musket and you're on the wall, you're probably going to be helping out with siege, okay? You're probably going to be helping out with siege. We're probably going to have repeaters everywhere. Depending on the server you're on, you might have different siege setups. We just rock repeaters. It seems to work fine. I don't even think we have a lot of people running siege, but if you are running siege on my server, then you should know that the priority is not trash mobs, okay? And I know a lot of people on my server like to shoot the trash mobs. There's no problem shooting it if there's nothing else, but it's probably better to save the ammo for something else. Like, chances are we'll have bombers, you know, we'll have bombers spawning on a gate, and you really want to have enough ammo to take care of all the bombers. If you don't, you're gonna have to get out and shoot them with your musket more than likely. Yeah, that's probably your top priority, I would say, as siege, is making sure the bombers don't get past, you know, a certain point. Bosses and stuff like that, it does help to have you shooting bosses, but it's not. Yeah, you should definitely shoot bosses, and I think you should follow the same kill priority list as the range do. So that's Spriggan, Brute, Commander, Priest, Bear. I don't think I'd really bother with Commander, Priest, and Commander, Priest, and Bear. I don't think I'd bother with Commander, Priest, and Bear if you were Siege. I think I would probably help with Spriggans and Brutes. Not even Brutes, really just Spriggans. It's also worth noting that if you're using the Siege, this ties into the main bow spear builds that people are going to be using. If a spear person applies 50% rend on a target, that works with Siege too, okay? So you'll be doing more damage on your Siege if somebody's rended a boss. That's why rending is so important in invasions. So yeah, synopsis of Siege would be: top priority is bombers, second priority bosses, third priority / not at all trash mobs like shooters and snipers and, you know, grunts. You don't really need to kill them. I think the people on the ground are more than capable most of the time, unless there's a few people down. If there's people downed, then definitely help out killing snipers, because snipers can be quite detrimental when there's people downed and you need to get reses off. I think it goes without saying as well that once the skulls pop up, that's your like number one priority. I would definitely keep an eye out for bombers too while you're shooting the skulls, but I think the skulls are probably more important in that situation. Okay, I think that's it. I'm trying to remember if I've covered everything. I feel like I have. Hopefully, if some of you guys haven't been doing some of the basic stuff that I mentioned at the start of the video, you start doing it, because it'll really help your damage in the long run. You know, like having the trophies, having the corrupted bane perk, having the right attributes, using Azoth arrows instead of whatever you're bringing in, using the right gems, applying rend. It's bread and butter stuff for me. But I mean, some people haven't really picked it up yet. So if you're one of those people that haven't picked it up yet, you know, start doing it, and you're going to notice a massive difference in your damage. You're going to go from, you know, 1 million to 3 million easy. Anyways, thanks a lot for watching, guys, and see you in the next one.